Welcome to the Exponential Potential Podcast. Ignite your potential and thrive in times of great change with your hosts, Jennifer Evans and Claire Oatway. Join us and feel uplifted and inspired as we share with you powerful and insightful stories, top tips and tools with our expert guests on an array of topics covering all aspects of life and business, designed to ignite your potential and help you thrive in times of great change.
Hello and welcome to the podcast Exponential Potential. I'm your co-host, Jennifer Evans, aka Zen Jen, and I have a wonderful guest with me today, Yvette Murray. We are going to be talking about mental health, something that's very key at the moment, and I'm sure what Yvette has to share will be incredibly beneficial and helpful. So we're going to be talking about recognizing the signs and symptoms of mental health, especially of someone who's going through it, who's having a mental well-being decline, and also how to have that conversation and how to find the best support for you and the person that's going through it. So welcome, Yvette Murray. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's great for you to be here. So Yvette Murray is an expert without a doubt. She has accolades and certifications as long as your arm. So you originally were a psychotherapist by trade, and Yvette's vision has been to assist people to connect to their authentic self. You're a forward thinker, a visionary with a wise, down-to-earth and relatability to others. So some of the qualifications and certifications, just when I was looking at your bio, just blew my mind. So you have a certification in the Osgood York University in mental health law. You're a certified facilitator of the mental health first aid certification, where you do coaching and training support in workplace mental health law. I'm reading to make sure that I get this right because it's a mouthful.
Thank you for reminding me, because I might not get it right either.
Yvette's also a Living Works instructor offering certified Safe Talk suicide alert training, as well as a certified suicide first aider and a suicide alert helper. That's pretty deep, and that must be. We'll talk a bit more about that, but that must be must bring up all sorts of emotions and things, but also a very deep sense of fulfillment, helping people that are really pretty much at the end of their tether and hitting rock bottom. So Yvette teaches students who've been employed by the Mental Health Commissions of Canada, Global Affairs Canada, the federal government, National Defence, Transport of Canada, Coast Guard, Salvation Army, Starbucks, Loblaws, hospitals, and many, many more. So you certainly, as I said, you are certainly the expert, the go-to expert. So that is quite what you've achieved there, and all your accomplishments and certifications. You're clearly passionate about helping others. So where did that start for you, Yvette?
Yeah, because when I hear expert, I always think, because I'm learning all the time. And I think as a community as a whole, we're all always learning. Yeah. If we go back to the times, for example, someone living with schizophrenia, the belief was it was because of a poor relationship with the mother. And we fast forward to today and we have a whole other way of looking at it. So, we're constantly evolving. And what I'm loving now and where my passion really does lie and why I'm so passionate about it is having that conversation around mental health. So it becomes more what we would call normalized. So it's not something we're going to hide away from and not speak about. I share one of the videos we do in our program, Mental Health First Aid. A person was describing their own self-stigma around mental health. And I remember one of the participants saying, I used to work with that woman And if I had known that she was going through what she was going through, it would have helped me and what I was going through. So it just shows you on a basic level, when we open up and we talk about and we get real, being when I talk, you say in the bio, being authentic, let's be authentic. So that way those conversations can be part of everyday living and supporting each other in that. So I know I gave you a long-winded answer for a question that I didn't answer, but as you could tell, I am passionate about it. I myself, I often say at the end of my mental health first aid courses, thank you for dedicating your time with me, because you help me with my own mental health when I'm able to show up and be of service. It really feeds me and my soul. And as you say, my purpose or passion.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think you make a very valid point that there's such a stigma attached to mental health. And also it would be interesting to have your take on what is mental health.
I love that. What a great intro, because the truth is we all have mental health, and there's stigmatizing thoughts around what mental health is. Mm-hmm. And, when I was teaching in class back a few years ago, the very first question out the gate, I'd say, so who here has mental health? And you get a few brave people like sneak their hand up, because the word mental health, and what does that mean for people? So really, we all have mental health, just like we all have physical health. Mm-hmm. I often think of, your arm, you put your arm out here and you give it a wiggle. It looks like it's outside of your body, but it's still connected to your body, just like your brain is connected to your body. And I'd love to get to a place where in community and society, we say, how's your health? We don't distinguish, well, how's your physical health or how's your mental health? How's your health? It's a holistic approach.
Yes. Yeah. And I think it's interesting because the stigma of mental health, in the UK, we had the mental hospital called Bedlam. And women, even not that long ago, women were deemed as hysterical when we got upset or we had our hormones were slightly out of balance. We were deemed by they're having an hysterical moment. Mm-hmm. And it's that history of, you think about mental health, and a lot of people go straight to what a mental health hospital, and the electric shock treatment and all the awful things that went on in those places.
Exactly. And, we've got to be mindful too of our wording and what we say. So, you probably had, off to the Bedlam, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And so, things like when, I was brought up in community and society, when we say, that's just crazy, that's nuts. Well, that was what I was used to saying. And now recognizing that that's actually stigmatizing language, shifting it to more respectful. Oh, that's peculiar, or that's interesting, rather than stigmatizing using the word crazy, because then those that are looking or probably seeking help or needing help might prevent them from getting that help because of the connotations that are associated or the negative prejudicial vibes about what those words mean.
Yes. Yeah. And as you say, if we're authentic with ourselves and we voice how we truly feel. I mean, I have a lot of clients that have a lot of anxiety and they keep it so quiet, and they feel, even in a very close-knit family, they say, my family doesn't understand what I'm going through. And it's like, well, have you had that conversation with your family? And it's seen as a weakness.
Yeah. When you speak of that, I think of many, many times in my life, in my experiences, when had I been aware of the signs and symptoms of anxiety, I would have handled situations a lot differently, even from my own personal, the way I showed up. And now I reflect back and go, no wonder I felt like that. No wonder that, now this makes sense. Because one of the biggest things that happens when someone's going through a mental well-being decline is, their self-worth gets a good kicking, and their self-worth and their self-esteem, because not only are you managing and dealing in some cases with these symptoms related to a mental health well-being decline, you're also thinking, I'm not good enough. There's something wrong with me. I'll share with you one of the biggest healings as studying to be a psychotherapist is we had to go through our own group work as well and our own personal therapy. And it was in that moment that I recognized pain in another, that I went, you mean it's not just me? You mean others feel this way too? And there was such comfort in that, knowing that someone else may be going through something similar. Now, having said that, just because I feel something or I'm going through something, someone might have a similar experience, doesn't mean it's the exact same. And what helps me may not be what helps you. It could be very different.
Yes.
And so sometimes we, get in the habit of our toolbox. Well, if you have this disorder, then that's the toolbox for you. Not necessarily, because we are all unique.
And it's even that name, labeling disorder, isn't it, as well? But life, the way life is, especially with COVID and what we've all been through in the last 2 years, that it's no wonder that some of us are very close to having, to feeling that anxiety or that depression, or, then evolving into something a lot more serious. So it's so important, I think, like you say, to have those conversations with people. So what are some of the symptoms or signs of someone that's having a mental health decline? What should we sort of be looking for? So,
really looking at what's the baseline for the person? How does an individual usually show up? So I use the example of, I'm a very outgoing personality. I'm the type that comes in the office. Hey, how was your weekend? How's it going? And chitty chat. And then I come into my computer, I'm on time and I'm well put together. Now, if you started recognizing, well, wait a second, Yvette's coming in. She's not making eye contact, coming straight to the computer, maybe showing up late for Zoom calls, maybe not showing up at all. And you wait a second, something's changed from the behavior for a couple of weeks now, and asking me about it. You may have a quieter personality that comes in and doesn't really engage on a regular basis, is very diligent, comes to the computer, gets to work. This doesn't mean that they have a mental well-being decline, because they're showing up differently than another person. It's really about looking at how does that individual regularly show up, and are the indicators showing that they're coming to work, or they're showing up in your family life and community in a different way. So there's many examples. I could give you a short few.
Yes.
Starting to neglect their personal appearance would be one of them. Easy to anger, very frustrated, agitated, perhaps more use of a substance of choice. That's another, and quite often too, when someone is diagnosed with a disorder or mental health disorder, it's very common for there to be another disorder. So say, for example, if they've been diagnosed with a depressive disorder, they may have a substance use disorder as well. And from a therapeutic perspective, they treat them in tandem. So they don't go, let's just deal with the depression and then we'll get to the substance. They actually work with them together, because the symptoms that are created by the depressive disorder, the person might be looking to the substance to help them with those feelings of what they're experiencing.
Yeah, that makes sense. Eating a lot. Women are especially very good with comfort eating, but maybe an increased comfort eating. And it's important, I think, to recognize the sounds for ourselves. I remember I lived in Belgium for 5 years, and I was living in a Belgian Dutch-speaking community, and I felt very cut off from my family and friends in the UK. My choice, I went there. My first husband was Belgian, and he was lovely, but I was withdrawing quite dramatically, and I was always a social butterfly, and I was always doing the organizing of everything, and that all changed, and I just sort of almost faded into the background, and I wasn't aware of what was going on, and I actually had a meltdown in a supermarket. I was literally on the floor in a supermarket, bawling my eyes out because I was so frustrated and emotionally upset. And I hadn't, it really I hadn't taken notice of what was going on around me and what was happening within me.
I love that you share that, because, it really gave you an opportunity to open up and show up in an authentic way. Your mind and body is saying, enough. I can't show up in this way anymore. Mm-hmm. And even the emotional eating too, that we do gravitate to foods to help us with our emotions. A few years ago, I took that very seriously. So now I eat foods that I know make me feel good. So rather than thinking of depriving, I shouldn't have that, I'm not allowed to have that, I go, I'm going to eat foods that I know after I eat them, I feel good. And there's a lot of stress busting mind foods as well. There's blueberries are really great for that. Anything to do with your gut, sauerkraut, any fermented foods help with the serotonins that 90% are actually built in your gut. So your gut health is really important too. So now I emotionally eat on those things.
But they're good things.
They're very good. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, and like you say, they make you feel good once you've eaten them. There's not there's not the guilt trip. So some of the symptoms and signs are quite clear if you're aware, if you tuning into the people around you or tuning into your own body.
Yeah. And so, for example, anxiety, you can do all the right things. You could be in self-care, and sometimes it just hits you out of the blue. Like you have no control of it. And I describe it as my mind like this. And it's this anxious feeling of next, what if, next, and really not having a direction. And I share the wisdom of my father, who I'll share this story with you. My mom was actually diagnosed with cancer, and she just had a lump in her breast. And I moved home to be supportive of my mom and going through her treatments, etc. And I brought my cats with me. And it was the day my mom was declared cancer-free at that point. She had had a mastectomy. And I noticed my cat hadn't been eaten for a few days, and I given her a belly rub, and I noticed a huge lump. So the fact that my mom was now no lump and my cat now has a lump, I can imagine the experience for me. And I remember bawling my eyes out and going and knowing I have to take my cat to the hospital. Tava was her name, the vet hospital. And I'm walking down out to the driveway. My dad's sitting there, and I'm because I'm about to move back to Toronto, and I got to do this, and I got like fur and snot hanging down my face. And my dad looks at me, goes, Yvette, focus on the task at hand. And it was in that moment that I go, all I'm going to do is getting Tava to the hospital. That's all I need to do right now. I'm not going to think about anything else. And I tell you, I use it so many times in my life today, because I can get caught up in the spin and what if and overwhelm and all of those feelings. Like, okay, what do I need to do right now in this moment? I guess it's coming back to the power of now. Now, right in this moment, what do we need to do instead of thinking in the far future?
Yes. And that, we are all very good at that, aren't we? Our minds we're either regretting and thinking about the past, or we're worrying about the future. And when you bring yourself to the moment, to the present, to the now, it's just like this.
Well, especially Jen, when you shared about all you're the organizer and the event planner. Hello. So we kind of have been trained to be thinking 4 steps ahead of ourselves too, right? Yeah. And that can become very, very overwhelming. So when I start to feel that feeling, I come back to what do I need? And it could be as basic as breathing. It's focusing on my breath. Sometimes I literally open up the front door, go outside and just go, get a big, deep breath. What does that smell like? What does that feel like? And come back to the senses. So it helps get away from what's the chitter chatter or the bouncing around in my mind.
Yes. Yeah. I've heard, and I use this as well, that the more involved your senses are to the present, the less you're in your head.
Yes.
Because you're really feeling it, aren't you? You're feeling what's that sun or that wind or that rain on your face, the colors, the sounds that you can hear, the smells. Yeah, when you get out of it really helps you get out of your mind, doesn't it? And helps you bring you to the present. I remember a friend of mine, this is another thing that I picked up on, and it used to really frustrate me, and then I realized what was going on with her. She would either never commit to something about going out, or she'd commit and constantly let you down. Mm-hmm. And that was because she was having an anxiety. She was very socially anxious. Mm-hmm. So she would want to go, but at the last minute, she just couldn't face it. Mm-hmm. And that's something I think, you can, you know, until I understood, and I was like, what's going on with her? What's really going on? And I'm like, okay. And we had that conversation. Yeah. So how do you suggest, moving forward, how do you have a conversation with somebody that you noticing things are getting different, they're withdrawing, they're behaving differently? How do you actually have that conversation?
Well, for me, it really starts with, first of all, being aware of what's happening and acknowledging it with them, saying I'm recognizing, and always coming from a place of concern and care. So we really want to be mindful not to come from a place of judgment. And one of the key things in all of the program that I teach around mental health first aid is that listening and communicating non-judgmentally. Really, it's not our place to put onto others what our belief systems are, how we think life should be, or the way people should be. I often say, don't let anyone should on you today, and don't should on yourself.
Don't should on yourself, yeah.
That word should reflect, okay, where is that really? Where's the energy coming from? What's the intention behind that word? And so, you know, I often say this, I can teach you all of the steps and actions in mental health first aid, but at the end of the day, if all of a sudden you're in a situation, you get flustered and you're like, okay, what was A again? What is L? What does that stand for? Come back to being human, come back to that human connection, that heart to heart, and being authentic and really listening and communicating without judgment. You know, it's a tricky thing, because when I started working with this program around listening and communicating non-judgmentally, I started recognizing, oh, I'm a wee bit judgy myself. I'm a bit of a judger. And then what happened is I started recognizing judgment in others. So then what happened? I became the judger. Judge the judges, the judges, judges. It keeps this vicious circle. So I often say, at any point in time, when you become aware of a behavior or thing that you're doing in conversations and in listening, judging, you have that big red reset button. You can press it at any time and reset it, because you want to stop that cycle. You know, and some of the ways of listening, communicating non-judgmentally is, and I know I'm a psychotherapist by trade, but I am the crappiest listener. I have to really work at it, because I am the one that goes, the minute you have a nanosecond pause, I'm in there with the word I think you're thinking of or needing. And 90% of the time I'm wrong. Or I'm the one that you're talking and I'm already thinking of my response rather than really be present with what you're saying. So really, these are some of the things to be mindful of: your body language, gentle eye contact. You really don't want to go in with an attitude of, this is an interview and I'm going to get to the bottom of this and I'm going to solve your problem, right? Because really, for somebody that's going through a mental well-being decline, it could be the very first time someone's acknowledging and seeing their pain. And it could be a bit of a shock to the system. So when you're offering those supports, it may be, no, I'm good. And then maybe they come back a few days later and say, you know what, Yvette, I thought about what you said. And yes, I would like some of those supports. We really have to get away from that preconceived notion and connotation that this is the way it's got to look and be, and our timing, it's their timing, because it's about them and their journey. It's not about us. And one of the other key things that I talk about is, I'm on a roll. You can tell I get really passionate.
You go. You got the floor.
So it's support does not equal fixing. And I have had to relearn this over and over and over again, because I am, I always go, you know, the fixer out there. I'm the fixer. I'm the one that doesn't like seeing people in pain. And I go, I can make you feel better. Here, do this. So support doesn't equal fixing. When someone is looking for support, literally being there with them in their pain without that knee-jerk reaction to want to fix them is so helpful in healing, because you're witnessing them, you're seeing them, and you're creating a sacred space for their healing.
Right. And that's it's that space, isn't it?
Yes.
It's the acknowledgement, the space, not wanting to jump in with 2 feet and blah about a load of advice and suggestions. So there is a big difference between support and fixing, isn't there?
Yeah. And I find for myself, when I'm not feeling very good, to me, there's nothing more agitating and irritating when someone is trying to change how I'm feeling and trying to put the bright side of things. And at least like Brene Brown speaks about that empathy and sympathy. So having empathy with someone, really digging deep to somewhere within yourself where you can relate to that feeling that they're going through, rather than trying to be the silver lininger, you know, trying to make it all feel better. Maybe right now they don't feel good. And it really holding the space for that.
And it's really important to allow those, for yourself and for others, is to allow the space for those feelings to come up, because they need to come up. And it's good to allow that space for them to vent and create that safe place for them where there's no judgment. And
you stay with them. You don't leave them. And that's so powerful. When you're at your worst, or you feel that you're at your worst, and someone acknowledges you and witnesses you, wow, that's powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the other aspect of that is this: when you're supporting somebody, it doesn't mean to say you have to carry their emotions and you have to carry their pain. You can still support them fully and care and nurture and listen without taking it on board.
And that's a skill, Jen. And that's what we talk about.
Practice.
We talk about that as well in the mental health first aid program. Is really in class, they used to have just algae. So those are the action steps. And then they added the S on the end for self-care for the first aider. And I love that tweak that they made, because recognizing the importance of us in the picture. And I often say, I like to put S at the beginning, S in the middle, and S at the end, because when you're supporting someone going through a mental well-being decline, it can be difficult. It can be challenging. And sometimes, remember, I spoke about some of the symptoms maybe being aggravation or fast irritable. Well, that's a hard energy to be around. And so sometimes the behaviors that are a result of someone going through and not feeling well and being in mental well-being decline might directly impact you. So it's so important that you are in care of yourself. What supports do you need to manage yourself? Boundaries. How do you have healthy boundaries to be able to connect with someone, be there for them, but like you said, not take it on and put everything, the weight of the world on your shoulders? Because that's where my book's coming from, The Mental Health Contagion, navigating yourself through a loved one's mental well-being decline. We talk a lot about someone going through a mental well-being decline, which it's fabulous. We got to start somewhere. But let's take that conversation a step further. What about the individuals that are around that? What are the risks to them going through their own mental well-being decline as a result of the living environment that they might be in? The more we talk about it, the more help is available, support. We really have to get on board to be there for each other.
And I think when you're with somebody that's going through that kind of those difficulties, and they're angry and they're impatient and they're frustrated, it's very easy to take that personally, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And then reflect, well, what's wrong with me? Why are they treating me this way? And it's sort of a reminder to go, hang on, this isn't about me. It's about what's going on with them right now.
So, yes. And acknowledging, and I think this is a key point here, that no matter what, if the behavior is, if it's a risk for you, that's a boundary that you need to put in place. Mm-hmm. So sometimes what we tend to do, and I know I've been there, is when someone's behavior, because they're not feeling well, directly impacts you, that you really have to be mindful of. Wait a second, I understand you're upset, but I'm not going to stay in that situation where I'm going to be in a toxic environment.
Yeah.
Right. And so really being mindful of what do I need to do to be in care of myself while I'm supporting the other individual.
Yes. So because self-care can mean many, many different things, can't it?
Yes. And it's not just a bubble bath.
No, it's not just, And yes, it's lovely to have a bubble bath and or go for a massage, but it's also, I think, self-care as well. It's, again, creating space for you. Going out for a walk, going in nature, doing some exercise or some kind of movement, just creating that space and that calm and that quiet for you, so that you then are in a better place to contribute to that person that's in your household.
Absolutely. And so I often share, because we ask the participants, so what's self-care to you, and why is self-care important? And quite often we get, because to be there for others, half cup full versus a full cup, you can't drive a car with an empty tank, things of that nature. And I also followed up with self-care. You are worthy self-care just for you. You don't have to justify it. You don't have to have an excuse that you are worthy of self-care, not to have a reason for self-care. And I'd love to get to a place, this could be a whole course in itself, where we no longer wait until we need self-care in order to be in self-care. Let's make it part of our everyday living. Self-care is just part of what we do.
Yes. Yeah. It just comes naturally.
That's right.
Yeah. And there's no need to even give ourselves permission.
No.
Or to like you say, or to justify it. And I think also around, the importance of self-care, this will actually help us so that we don't get to the point of having a mental health decline.
And I love it because I often say, you might, if you're not used to self-care, you might ruffle some feathers too. Just be mindful of that. So I remember about 3 years ago, I took self-care really serious. And I remember hearing, oh, must be nice you have time for that. Must be nice you can afford to do that, things of that nature. And I often chuckle now because fast forward a few years, recognizing the way I show up in my life, the way I show up in work, in business, in personal relationships. Whoa, wait a second. I think I should have some of what she was having. Like that seems to work. And now I get, so when's my appointment that you made for me for that massage? So it's like they jump on board because they go, whoa, she's on to something here.
Yeah. It is. And I think we're waking up to that more and more, the importance, and realizing it's not a selfish thing to do. It's actually a necessity. It's not a pamper. It's a necessity. It truly is a necessity.
And if anyone's waffling about that, just have a little miniature Yvette on your shoulder going, it's okay to have self-care. It's okay to have self-care. And there's your permission.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Excellent. So you mentioned your book. Can you talk a bit more about your book?
Yes, I'm in the process of digging deep with it. When I first started writing it, the concept was really about having that support for individuals that are living with a loved one, or even at work and communities and friends that are going through a well-being decline. And what I discovered when I started writing it, and I keep hearing dig deep, because I don't want it to be a surface book where I just, regurgitate all the tools that I've learned over the years. And it's really about that human connection and being real and authentic, that it's not easy. And where I waffle is I don't want to create a scenario where it's us against them, those with mental well-being declines and those with not, because the truth is at any point in time in our lives, we could all go through a mental well-being decline. So it's really about how do we hold, like we said earlier, that sacred space for them and for ourselves as well. Yeah, so I'm very excited to release it. I've gotten permission from all of my family members to go for it because I had stigma around that too. My mom was diagnosed as bipolar, so I was brought up and grew up in that type of environment, and I remember being very ashamed or had stigma around, what does that mean? My mom is the most incredibly beautiful woman, and I miss her every single day. And I cherish, although some of those moments were difficult, it's who I am today because I've been through those experiences, and I'm able to share and be of service to help others that might be going through a similar thing.
And can you just give your name of your book again, please?
Yes, The Mental Health Contagion, Navigating Yourself Through a Loved One's Mental Wellbeing Decline. And so it's really about the belief of mental health. It can aspects of it can go to the people around them as well. And so it's not just, you've got it. And I don't know if it's a good idea to compare it to the coronavirus, but it's like, okay, it's easily transmitted. So certain behaviors and things are easily transmitted where you now become experiencing a mental well-being decline if you're not paying attention to what do you need to be in health of yourself.
Yes. Yeah. Because that energy it's catching. You pick up on other people's energy for sure.
Yeah. I think it's important to mention too that someone that might be going through a mental well-being decline, if it's not intervened early or recognized early, there is a potential that goes into a mental health disorder. And the distinction really between a mental health problem or a decline is the diagnosis. So that would be something you would have to have diagnosed. So what we really want to get away from is that labeling and diagnosing people, because once we know more, right, we think you've got depression. Well, not necessarily. And I always suggest the best place to start is with a doctor. The doctor is going to, if they're not able to help you in the moment, they're going to know someone that can.
Yes. Yeah. And actually, that's one of the questions I just want to take us back to the beginning is where do you find the best support? How does somebody find support for themselves or their loved ones or a colleague? What would be their first steps?
Yeah. So, I mean, for me, taking the mental health first aid program is definitely a starter because we go through many different scenarios and case studies, and we guide you on how to have that conversation with each individual scenario, where to get the best support. But for our listeners today, the Mental Health Commission of Canada is a great resource. And I know you're calling from Italy, and I know they have mental health commissions in Italy and Australia, all around the world. And so even the mental health first aid program is accessible worldwide. We're available in over 20 countries. There's the suicide helpline as well, the suicide crisis line. So my suggestion, because we have a wide range of audience here, is to literally Google the mental health, whatever it is that you're experiencing. We've also got here in Canada and all the different provinces, we have 211ontario.ca that offers mental health services as part of that as well. So every province, it would be 211 BC, 211 that thing, Alberta.
Yeah, and actually what we'll include in the information is links to the UK, to North America, and any other links that you can share in terms of sort of worldwide links.
I'll send that over to you after.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. Anything else you'd like to share with the listeners, Yvette?
I have so much. Be real, be loving of yourself. And we're all learning as we go. I mean, the COVID-19, the pandemic has put us all in a position where we have to pay attention. We have to pay attention to our mind and our body, our holistic approach to things. And I think it starts with being human, really connecting as a fellow human being and kicking that judger to the door. And I have a philosophy that's really worked for me in my life. And it's when you acknowledge or accept when something's happening, a behavior is happening, plus another action equals change. We can't change anything unless we acknowledge that it exists and that we're doing it. Choose another action and that equals change.
Lovely, lovely. And also we're not alone.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. We're not alone.
We're never alone.
There's so many of us that can relate. And for me, when I share things on social media, I always kind of go, "Ooh, like, should I really share that?" And when I show up authentically and I really true and come from the heart, I get the most likes, the most comments. And sometimes I'm like going, "Oh, I don't know how this one's going to go." But they're usually the ones that get the most impact because
you're being real. Yeah. Yeah. So where can people find you, Yvette? How can they get in touch with you and find out more about possibly working with you or getting more information? How do they reach out and connect with you?
Simply go to the mentalhealthtrainer.ca. So it's mentalhealthtrainer.ca. You can go to the website there. I do private keynote speakings, and I do teach the mental health first aid program as well. And of course, the suicide awareness webinars as well.
Marvelous. And we'll include that link as well on the information. Well, thank you so much, Yvette. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Lovely. Thank you so much for reaching out, Jen. This has been fabulous.
Yes. And hopefully, I'm sure that the conversation's been very helpful and beneficial for the listeners. So thank you for watching and listening. Till next time, take care. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. We'd love to hear your comments and feedback. And if you've enjoyed it, please click on that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, and feel free to share. Join us for our next episode of the Exponential Potential podcast. Ignite your potential and thrive in times of great change.